We're very pleased to have tonight a presentation of a new product that you've heard probably quite a bit by now. We've heard the update. It's been everything from all these digital magazines to the Times. A new program called 123, which is very interesting. I really should just let you see it. It's very impressive. Not much you can say about it in a short introduction. And its creator, Mitch, Kapor, who's president of Lotus Development Corporation in Cambridge, and also we're very proud to have as a director of the Boston Computer Society.
All right.
Thank you very much, John. We have a multimedia presentation tonight. We have a 35mm slideshow and then a large screen projection television system to actually demonstrate 1, 2, 3. But before I get into either of those things, I always like just to do a quick survey of who's here tonight. I'm not going to ask the usual question, how many people own or have access to personal computers, because I think I know the answer. But on a point of personal curiosity, how many 1, 2, 3 users are there in the audience right now? So that makes the rest of you future 1, 2, 3 users. What I'm hoping to do tonight is to tell you a little bit about the product, where it came from, what we believe it's good for, and to tell you just a little bit about Lotus and the people behind the product. So if we could have the lights down, I will try the slideshow. Well, that seems to be working. I gave this another version of the slide presentation about 10 days ago at the Boston Computer Society IBM user group meeting, and it was the first time I'd ever tried to run it, so I told everybody that they were my beta site and that they would have to be patient with any bugs that came up. Unfortunately, tonight this is the shipped version of our slideshow, so you have to fully warranty that it is free from bugs and defects in workmanship. Lotus Development Corporation is a fairly new company, no more than a couple of years old, and I'm pleased to say it is a Boston software company, one of a number of companies in this area. We're in a little bit of a competition with Silicon Valley, and companies like Software Arts and ourselves and Microcom and Infocom and others which I'm leaving out are forming a nucleus of a lot of software activity, commercial products in both the business and game area in the Boston area. And in general, I think that's a good thing. The way Lotus got started, basically, and the genesis of 1, 2, 3 was that I was responsible for the original design and implementation of the VisiPlot program and the VisiTrend program, which are marketed and now owned by VisiCorp, formerly called Personal Software. And I was very fortunate in happening to follow in the trail of VisiCount, which blazed entire new markets and opened up the opportunity for additional products, such as a general graphing package, which is what VisiPlot was. And while that product was under development, it occurred to me, largely because a number of users came and spoke to me and said, well, I think VisiCalc is great, and VisiPlot is pretty good, but it's pretty painful to be inside a spreadsheet program and to come up with a calculation and to do a what if, and then to try to make a graph out of it, because I have to go through a rather laborious process of saving an intermediate file to disk and then exiting from the VisiCalc program, removing that diskette, remembering where I put my VisiPlot diskette, putting that program diskette in, turning the power on, recycling it, waiting 30 to 45 seconds for it to come up, and then having to reload the file from disk, and all in all about 10 or 15 steps that require 3 or 4 minutes. And then if it turns out that my numbers were not the ones I wanted, I have to repeat the entire process. And out of very valid observations from people who said, gee, can't we do any better than this? The notion of an integrated software package is born. And that is basically what 123 is. This is a picture of the actual product, which, by the way, we started shipping last month at the end of January. So far, we have just broken into the 5 figures in terms of the number of orders, so it is now rapidly proliferating throughout the IBM PC environment. And that's an important point. People ask us, well, among other things, what does the program run on? I've heard that it's wonderful. I don't know what it does. That's something we'll talk about a little bit later. Why the IBM PC to start? And that falls out more out of some technical considerations, but I think they're pretty important for the user community in general. And it's simply that the 8-bit machines, the Apple II and all of the Z80 and CPM machines that were dominant until very, very recently, simply didn't have enough horsepower to be able to combine functions that were formerly found in separate products into a single product. And the key notion of a piece of integrated software is that you take separate functions, such as a spreadsheet and graphing and database management, and you bring them together in a single program, which has a single set of commands and a single way of getting all the data. But to do that simply outstrips the power of 8-bit machines. So very early on, we made a fundamental decision that we would address ourselves to what we saw as the emerging crop of 16-bit personal computers, of which the IBM so far is the dominant example, and of which there are now dozens of additional machines, with more being announced every week. Picture of some diskettes. One of the things that we try to do in the product is pay a lot of attention to little loose ends to provide user convenience features. And on the IBM PC and on most machines that are coming out now, you see sets of function keys. They may be on top of the keyboard or to the left of the keyboard. We didn't see so many of them on the Apple or the Osborne. And it's the question of how do you take advantage of them, because they have cryptic labels F1, F2, F3. So what some people do when they put together a program is they supply either replacement keycaps or little tags or stickers that you stick on top of the keys. Typically you find this in word processing programs. The only problem with that is if you're not using that particular application, then you can easily get confused when you're running something else and the keycap now has a different cryptic symbol on it. One of the things we've done in the product is to have included a little plastic template that firmly snaps on over the function keys and labels what each of them does. When you're done with 1, 2, 3, you just pop it off and put it away, and it leaves your machine unblemished. What are the components that are in 1, 2, 3? First, there is a spreadsheet, information management, also known as database sometimes, and graphs. Why these 3? Well, there are historical reasons that we started with the notion of marrying a spreadsheet program together with a graphing program simply to provide the synergy. If you're doing a what if, you're making a forecast or a plan and you want to see what it looks like visually, you should be able to hit a single key and see your graph come up instantly. So, and we'll see that in the demo a little bit later. Marrying those two together is important. And the notion of keeping track of information, of lists, of mailing lists, and things to do is a common database type of function. What we try to do in 1, 2, 3 is not orient ourselves towards what I call transaction processing databases, keeping sets of books, accounting, invoicing, or very, very long lists where typically all you're doing is either sorting the list and printing it out. We try to orient ourselves more towards smaller scale information management, where there is a real premium on the flexibility and on the speed and on the utilization of what you have in your database into Spreadsheet and graphing. And I can just give you a quick example of that. One of the things that we do at Lotus is to keep our personnel file in 123 database. And it has information about all the employees. And we've defined a number of reports, things that you can do with it. And with a company that is adding a couple of people every week, it's very helpful just to sit there, enter in a new name, quickly resort the information, and then print out a phone list, which then is circulated and passed out to everybody. That procedure can be done in less than 5 minutes. At the same time, we have information about salaries and when people need to be reviewed. And what we do with that internally is that we take numbers out of the database of salary figures and how long people have been at work, and we use that as a management tool to compute things like averages and compare ourselves to median salaries for the industry and so on. And that having the information management capability there at the same time with the spreadsheet and the graphing is the thing that makes undertaking that type of task feasible. Because if you had to go to a separate product or read all of the database off a disk, you'd probably find it easier either to punt on the whole thing or to do the calculation by hand. One of the observations that I had made very early on actually had very little to do with the cartoon, but I'm reminded of it. And that simply is that there is a general fascination with computers, and there's also some apprehension or fear about it. And no matter which group of people one talks to, whether it is first-time users who just purchased a machine, or people that are now starting to read articles and get interested in it, or people that have just heard things vaguely floating around, I think the key issue in designing software, and something that we've tried very hard to do in 123, is to provide an experience which has a minimum degree of frustration and something which can remove the maximum amount of insecurity out of using a computer. The goal simply being to allow people to solve their productivity problems in a straightforward, clean fashion, and really have the computer-ishness of the whole experience be very, very far in the background. Just a few quick comments on some of the features in 123 that we'll see. We have used the sometimes infamous moving cursor menu, which is, we think, a very convenient way of giving instructions to the computer rather than having to type long commands. Another factor in the product is that we supply with it a separate diskette, which is an interactive tutorial that actually can teach a first-time user who's never sat down on a computer before how to use the product. And it consists of a series of lessons which have a script and examples with 1, 2, 3 actually running in the background, and exercises for the person who's using the tutorial to try things out. So it takes the first-time user through all of the major features of the product in a series of 6 step-by-step lessons, so that within several hours, someone who had never even sat down at a keyboard before can get into the program and begin doing useful things. Once you're in the program, we don't like to leave people stranded. We don't like to force people to have to look up things in the manual. We have a very extensive help facility that we'll take a look at when we do the demo. When 123 is talking to you, it speaks or displays in full English words and sentences, not cryptic letters, not DDoS error on C. That's not unique to 123. It just represents what we think is, again, the general motion of products to be more comprehensible and less computerish. The macro capability, something very interesting, something we'll take a brief look at. A spreadsheet is a spreadsheet is a spreadsheet, but a programmable spreadsheet goes one step further, in the sense that we have a facility within the product so that an expert user can, in fact, create his or her own applications as you would in a programming language. The advantage being that it is far less complex to develop your particular application using the macro capability in 1, 2, 3. It makes it possible for you as an expert user to create your own menu-driven turnkey applications that take full advantage of all the power of 1, 2, 3, and to be able to give those to people, for instance, in the organization that you work in. And ultimately, we think it's going to lead to a whole set of business opportunities for people to create and sell applications written in 1, 2, 3. We'll take a look at that also in the demo. Text processing. I've talked about 3 functions in 1, 2, 3: spreadsheet, information management, and graphs. We do not have at this point a full word processing capability that will be coming later in the year. However, there are a number of fairly powerful primitives or operations to do text processing, in that you can insert and delete lines and characters, and in fact even justify text, and in fact beyond that, you can put headers and footers if you're printing out a multi-page report, so that it is possible to use 1, 2, 3 to do limited word processing. We use it internally at Lotus to write memos and brief notes and reports. Hard disk compatibility, yes, that's now something that you basically just have to have if you're doing a product. File import, it's important that the product coming out in today's market not be completely isolated, but that it be able to talk to the outside world, so that 1, 2, 3 supports several formats for reading and writing information that may have been created by other applications. Among these are DIF, the data interchange format supported by VisiCalc and a large number of other programs. We can read and write ASCII text files. That just means you can read in, for example, files from word processors such as WordStar or write them out. We also have the capability to read and write DBase2 files because we think there's a good synergy between the relational database capabilities of DBase and the information management capabilities in 1, 2, 3. Finally, we support a nice range of printers and plotters, and we'll take a look at some of the hard copy samples in a minute. What you're seeing on the screen now is a screen photo of 1, 2, 3. It was not taken from the IBM personal computer. It was taken from the Texas Instruments version of the product, which we're going to release in May. The TI professional computer has a very high multicolor screen resolution. With the graphs, you can add legends and titles and rescale it and do all sorts of the good things that you can do with VisPlot or other standalone graphing packages. Take a look at some of the hard copy. One comment about the hard copy, and that is, you may note that the resolution that you see, and that's just a photograph of a piece of paper, is far higher than what you see on the screen. We play some tricks in 1, 2, 3 such that no matter which version you have and which screen you have, when you actually come to print out your graph, it prints at the full resolution of whatever printer or plotter you have, so that you can get absolute presentation quality, multicolor graphs and charts, for instance, on an HP 7470 plotter, and you can get near presentation quality hard copy on a standard Epson MX80 or FX80. Smiling people. We'll talk about the feature wars and all the wonderful little things that 1, 2, 3 has in it. I'm going to get to the demo. Okay, so much for slideshow. That's the basic overview of the product. I'm going to move over to the other side, and we'll actually take a quick run through the session with 1, 2, 3, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers. We're going to try to get the house mic working so I can do this without screaming. It may take another minute. VisiCalc or SuperCalc or Multiplan or MBA, your
familiar with the spreadsheet, it's got rows and columns. We have a cursor that moves from cell to cell. And all action in 1, 2, 3 takes place in this spreadsheet format. If I press the Home key, we come up to the upper left-hand corner of the screen, and we take advantage of some of the keys on the keypad, such as page up and page down, so that one can quickly move around and see the different areas of the sheet. Page down simply means move down 20 rows. You can just scan down and see what we have. We also have some quick ways of getting from the top to the bottom. If you can see the numbering clearly, you'll see that the last row is row 2048. There are indeed 2048 rows in the spreadsheet, and column IV corresponds to 256 columns. We can also take full advantage of all of the memory that you might have in the IBM PC, which is up to, I think, 544K. It makes it possible to run very, very large spreadsheet models, and in fact, to run large spreadsheet models with a database that may have 1,000 records of, let us say, 100, 150 characters. It can all fit in memory quite nicely. What I'm going to show you is a simple example of 1, 2, 3 that exercises some of the different features in it. What we have here is just a list of hotels and some information about each of the hotels. So in the left-hand column here, we have the city that the hotel is located in, for example, Atlanta. Then we show the number of rooms, the region that it's in geographically, a category code, and then what the revenue figures were for 1980, the occupancy rate, the average fee per night, and then the same information, revenue, occupancy, and fee for 1981. Simply laid out in rows and columns, and we have approximately 30-some hotels listed here. Right now, they appear to be in alphabetical order by city. What we might want to do in an initial pass of analysis is simply to rank them in decreasing order of revenue so we could see which the most active hotels were. What we simply want to do is to sort this information and to take a look at it, and I'm going to step you through that and show you how we do it. To get to a command in 1, 2, 3, you simply press the slash key, and now on the second and third line of the screen, you can see some additional information. Second line has the highlight on the item marked worksheet. If I move the highlight by pressing one of the arrow keys, it's now on range, copy, and move. These are all different commands or sets of commands. You may have noticed that the information on the line below the menu with the commands changes as I move from item to item. We call that a long prompt. It simply gives you more information about what will happen if you select that command. Move means move a cell or range of cells. With the highlight on file, there is a list of the file commands. You can retrieve a file, save it, combine it, extract it, and so on. You'll also notice that in addition to the spreadsheet commands like copy and move, right up at the top level are the graph, and next to it the data command, which allows you access to all of the graphing and all of the information management capability. With the highlight on data, we can see that one of the subcommands is sort. I'm just going to press the Enter key, and it brings up the submenu. Move the highlight to sort. And now I'm confused because let us suppose that I'm not a frequent user of the product, and I've done sorting before, but I don't really remember what a data range is and what a primary key is. At any point within the program, I can press the Help key, and it retrieves a particular screen full of information that's appropriate to where you are in the program. So this is a screen that tells you about the data sort command, asks you to choose a sort range or operation, and in fact now when you press the arrow keys you can see the highlight moving from item to item. And what this allows us to do is if we want to find out more about data range, we just move the highlight to data range and press Enter again, And now we get a new screen of information about what a data range is in sorting. You can see that we have some diagrams in block character form that help explain visually what's involved. And one can simply browse through the entire help file to determine whatever information that you happen to need. If you're not sure what information you need, you can always go to the help index, which is a master index for the whole program, and then you can simply move to whatever item you want. If you want to find out about the keyboard, here's a picture of the keyboard with the keys labeled. We can also press the backspace key, and this is just like turning the pages back in a book. We can review the screens where we've been. And when you're all done, just press the escape key, and we return to 1, 2, 3, exactly where we were. The entire manual in a condensed form is online and available within the help facility. Excuse me. So what we want to do is sort this information. We need to pick a data range, that is to say where the information is on the sheet that we want to sort. And what 1, 2, 3 is doing now is it has remembered what it was that I sorted last time, and it is reproposing it to me. I could simply accept it the way it is, or if you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there's a blinking underscore. By pressing one of the arrow keys on the keyboard, I can essentially drag that corner of the screen, and I can modify what it is that I'm going to sort to include fewer items or more items. I can also, by pressing the period key, take a look at all 4 corners of the range, even if, since there are some 34 rows of information to sort, and we can only see 20 at a time, you can't see the top and bottom at the same time. But we have a convenient method of showing you all corners, so now we can see Albany up here. And I, in fact, just want to leave that exactly the way it was. Now we want to pick a primary key. This says by what column or on what measure do we want to rearrange this information. Again, a blinking underscore in the upper left says, well, the last time you did it was by hotel, and all I need to do now is to move the highlight by pressing the arrow key to the column that says revenue, because that is the way we want to reorganize the information. Now it says enter sort order with an A for ascending or a D, which I'm going to type for descending. And now we're ready to go. I'm going to press the G key and see if we can get this information sorted. And we're all done in about a second. There it is. You can see. If, by the way, you decide that, if you, let us say, want to sort it by the number of rooms, this time I'm just going to enter the keystrokes. I'm not going to explain in full what I'm doing. / B for data, S for sort, P primary key, move it here, enter, keep the order descending, and type a G for go. And it's done. One of the advantages of having the database in memory as we have it here is the speed. This type of operation was basically instantaneous. If you had, let us say, 1,000 names on your mailing list and phone list which you were maintaining, you could sort that entire list in about 12 to 14 seconds. One of the other things that we can do, though, is not just sort lists, but we can, in fact, pull out statistical information. If we were interested not in everything in the database, but let's say our job as an analyst was to take a look at trends in the different regions and categories, we have the ability simply to enter in a particular region and a category. This is now on B1. I'm going to change that to an A here. Let me leave out, I mistyped it. A. And now I can simply press the Calc key. Watch the numbers in the middle of the screen. Notice that they've changed. What we're computing there is the average revenue and the average occupancy for just those items in our database that happen to be in Region A and Category 1. So we have the capability of going in to the database and pulling out selected information as you would in an ordinary database, and you can see the actual records themselves, or you can compute the statistical information that you want. Now, here's why that's important. Let's come back to B1. I press the Calc key to recalculate. Numbers change. And now I press the home key. We're up at the top left-hand corner of the screen. Here's our friend Region B, Category 1. And in fact, this number where the highlight is $16.6 million is the calculated value that we calculated below. And in a standard spreadsheet fashion, we just have a formula. You can see on the top line it says plus Rev 1980. If you're familiar with spreadsheets, this is kind of a giveaway. You can refer to individual cells or groups of cells not only by coordinates but by English names or phrases which are meaningful to you. And basically we've done in that recalculation, although you didn't see it, we've updated some of the numbers on this top sheet here. 1980 actual revenues, that's where the highlight is now, and 1981 actual revenues, also the occupancy rates and the average night rental. The reason we did that is following a typical problem path. What we really want to do is to project what the revenues are likely to be in future years, 82, 3, 4, and 5. A standard spreadsheet application, the only difference being that we're taking our input numbers from statistics on a database. And we, in fact, have already calculated the projected values for 82, 83, 84, and 85. The highlight is on revenues now. Down here, we've set up the spreadsheet model to show the profit or loss. Now, this is all fine. We can look at those as a series of numbers, but remember what I was saying before. It may be very helpful to get a visual image of what those numbers mean. We might want to actually compare revenues and profits for all 5 years. Let me see if I can call up a graph. There we go. Now, the specifications for that graph had been created previously. I'll show you how we do that. Let me first, since we have a color system here, come up and type slash G for graph, O for options, C for color, quit, view. There we go. Now we can see it in color and take advantage. So we support both black and white and color. What I want to do is show you an example of what-if graphing. In constructing this model, one of the factors we based the projections on were the inflation rates. Down on the last line are our estimates of the inflation rates. And let's suppose in 1985, instead of estimating 5% inflation, we think the inflation is going to be 40%. God forbid. I type in a 40% in that cell. I press the calc key. It's going to update the 1985 numbers. Now notice the last bar, the violet bar over on the right. The graph automatically adjusts itself to reflect what the proper values of the data are. Suppose I also wanted to look at how much my salaries were, in addition to looking at the overall revenue and profit. What I can do is I can, in fact, redefine the graph /G, and I want to add a third data range, a third set of data. We call them A, B, C, D, E, F. And what I do is I simply say, where is it on the sheet? Well, it starts here, and I'm just moving the arrow keys. I highlight the entire range, press the Enter key, and now I type a V for view, and now we have a third set of bars automatically included. I could, in fact, just for the sake of completeness, show you how we add a legend item to that. So the bottom line of the graph looks right. I say options, legend for the C range, and we'll call it salary. Quit, view. Okay, there you go. One of the things that you can do is you can now give this whole graph a name, save it with the model, and then recall it at any time later on. What you have is the ability essentially to construct not only your spreadsheet and the formulas and relationships, but any series of graphs on that information and to call them up to play what if with them all at the same, at your whim. You notice that the product seems to perform pretty rapidly. This was a design goal. We felt that if we were going to do an integrated product, each of the pieces of the product had to stand on its own pretty well when compared to competitive products, so we wanted to make sure that in the whole area of feature wars that we could hold our own so that the 123 spreadsheet has an equivalent, in fact, larger set of functions, and that we have an appropriate set of graph types, and that the speed of recalculation is very rapid. We think it's important that a product be usable by the broadest variety of people, and that includes the first-time users for whom we supply things like the tutorial and the help facility, and also for the expert users. There's a lot of headroom in the product, a lot of room to play, and I just want to show you one last feature, and then we'll have time for some questions. I just pressed the key, it's called Alt-X, and that invokes something that we call a macro. It's really just a series of keystrokes, but stored on the sheet, just the way you would type them in normally, except for the fact that 123 remembers what they are and gives you a few extra wrinkles. And in fact, what we've done with this is we have a menu that says Analyze, Full, Graph, and Sort, and so on. These are not menu items that come with 123. These were defined by the person who developed the model, and I'm going to prove that to you. I'm going to drop out of that. I'm going to find out where on the sheet that thing is using the range command. Look through names of what I've got defined here. Look for that guy, and here it is. Okay. And, oops, I didn't want to leave it. I wanted to stay right there. If you look on the second line on the screen, there are friends Analyze, Full, Graph, Sort, and Utility. I could, in fact, change this to, say, BCS. Type that in on the sheet. And here's BCS. So it's fairly easy to create menus. What's behind the menus, for example, if I pick the item called Sort, the way I've got this defined is I could sort my same database. I don't have to go through the 1, 2, 3 commands. I can just say sort it by location. There we go. We're back sorted by city, or I can say sort by revenue. And there we go. The method for creating these things is relatively straightforward. Let us not say for the first-time user, but for a reasonably experienced user. After all, it is a programming language. The net effect for the broader community is that we have an application which we think almost anybody can use without having to learn 1, 2, 3, just learning to run things off of menus. And you could define whole reports which could be generated from a single keystroke, or arbitrarily complex series of whatever you could do in the spreadsheet area and the graphing area and database area can all be done within this macro capability. We think that's one of the real high-end features of the product. And we think in the first month, people are just getting used to the basic features of 1, 2, 3. We think that process is going to go on for a long time. And we think that in the future, a lot more people will also get into this area of the product. I'm going to move back over to the podium. If we could have the lights up, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the product, whether I've covered it or not. Thank you. Questions?
How much?
Oh, the retail price is $495.
Yes.
Variable column width?
Variable column width. Yes, variable column width. If people want to shout out features, I can tell you whether they have them or not. In back?
Variable decimal width.
Yes, variable decimal width. We'll see how many yeses I can get before I hit a no. Excuse me?
If you're working with foreign currency data where the numbers are several decimal places and you're listing them, can you justify them under the decimal point as opposed to just to the left and to the right?
Yes, with a small limitation.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yeah, the question has to do with can you get true decimal alignments with different numbers of places to the right? Yeah, I could think of a couple of ways to achieve something close to the desired effect. I don't think that particular feature itself is there. You have a fixed number of places to the right of the decimal. You could pad in the zeros. But that's, see us if you really want to, you could really understand what the question is without getting into a long technical thing about it right now, okay? Yes? Memory requirements are 128K of RAM minimum.
Data communication in the IBM world.
Data communications in the IBM world. At this time, nothing integral to 123 itself. Lots and lots of users doing things with 123 and communications. The approach for right now is take any off-the-shelf or, in fact, custom file transport program, of which there are over a dozen, and bring down a file onto your IBM PC. Since we can read and write GIF and text files and formatted text files and so on, chances are you'll be able to get your information into a form that 123 can use immediately. Communications integral to 123 is something which we'll see along with word processing rather towards the end of 1983. In front?
Yes, what other machines are you slated to have this running on?
Other machines that we will see 123 on. So far we've announced the Texas Instruments professional computer in May availability.
How about the deck?
The deck equipment, we haven't made an announcement yet. Let me, before I get hit with specifics, the way that we're comfortable doing business is when we've made the decision and we're ready to announce when everybody can have it. We'll make the announcement on the machine. When we were doing the IBM version back in September, we said it would be available January 26th, and in fact it was available January 26th. We're going to see another version besides the TI for another machine available in the same time frame in May, and there are a couple of OEM versions that I'm just waiting to sign a contract so we can talk about it. Other machines such as the DEC Rainbow and machines in the 8086, 8088 family, you'll see lots and lots of support for 123 at some point this year as new machines come out in following years. But other than IBM, which by the way, that version also runs quite successfully on the compact portable computer and on the Columbia Data Systems machine, if you run IBM's DOS with it. The TI and 3 versions, which shall go nameless at least for the next couple of weeks. Yes, sir.
Do you require the disk to be a resident all the time on the drive, or can you load it off?
Why do you ask whether the disk has to stay in the drive?
Do you have overlays?
Ah, overlays. No, in fact, one of the things about the speed of the product is that with the exception of the help screens, which are stored on disk, all of the code that makes the thing go is in fact stored in memory, in 123 itself. There are some utilities that come with the product that let you fairly conveniently do things like copy, erase, and rename files by pointing to them, that let you do the translation from and to DIF, that let you convert VisiCalc models, which you may have, into 123 worksheets, preserving formulas and formats and all. Those things are tied together by a common menu structure, and when you ask for one of those, it will be loaded off disk. So when you're running 1, 2, 3, the program itself, you could take your disk out. Of course, you won't get any help if you need it. And otherwise, you just need the diskette in there if you want to access one of the utilities. Yes, sir.
The database section of the program, what is the maximum field length?
In the database section of the program, what is the maximum field limit? John, are you here? John Sachs? I know you didn't make it. I was hoping that John Sachs would come in for one thing. I always like to have him answer a question when we're here so I can make him stand up and be recognized. He is the co-designer and chief technical implementer of the product. I think the maximum field length you can have is something like 240 characters. See, because the database is done on a spreadsheet, anything you can do in a spreadsheet cell, you can do in a database field. And I remember that you can have 240 characters in a cell. I mean, it's going to be kind of a very wide cell. But because we have a text justification command and capability, you can actually get that to rearrange itself neatly in 6 rows of 40 characters, whatever you want. Yes?
That's also the length of the line on the spreadsheet?
No, well, there's 256 columns, each of which could have any number of characters in it, up to 240. At some point, you're going to start running out of memory, but it depends how much memory you have in the machine. Yes, sir?
As regards, say, graphs and the justification and so forth, how many printers does 123 support and which ones?
Printers. Currently, the Epson MX80 and IBM's version of it with the IBM label on it, the HP 7470 plotter, the Integral Data Systems Prism color printer, and on the May 1st release and upgrade to users, the Oki printer, which is a fairly popular printer, and the Strobe plotter. There are a number of other things that we're working on.
Which one of the others, the 82, 92?
The Microline, any of the, I know there are Lotus people hiding in the audience here. I know some of our development people are here. Anybody want to field that? I'm not sure which one. I can try to find out for you by the end of the meeting.
After you sort, does that column stay sorted in the way you sorted it? And secondly, how many sorting capabilities can you have?
Yeah, it stays sorted unless you do something to it. 2 keys, a primary and a secondary.
And how many sorted fields can you have?
How many columns? 256. Again, it's the concept to understand, and this is, it takes a little getting used to, but then the simplicity itself is, just think of it as this big, huge spreadsheet with 2,048 rows and 256 columns. Anything that you do in the database, those are the applicable limits and the memory that you have in your machine. As just sort of a benchmark, you could, if you had a 320K machine, you take your standard IBM and plop in somebody's 256K card, you could have 2,000 records with approximately 100 characters each. So if you compare that to things on the Apple like PFS or earlier versions of Visifile, which, although they're disk-based, were limited to a single disk volume, you can have approximately as much information as you could hold on a single floppy disk. Maybe a little bit less, but that's the ballpark. So there's a lot.
Spreadsheet has windowing, vertical, horizontal.
Does the spreadsheet have windowing? Yes. At this point, windows either horizontal or vertical, a la VisiCalc. In the back? What? Tomorrow or what period of time? Well, there are several directions that we're going in, all at the same time. The first is we'll see 1, 2, 3 on lots and lots of machines. We've announced a few, I think, in later 83 and 84, without upsetting any of the manufacturers. I think it's fairly evident that any one of a number of companies could come out with a machine that is of the relative power of the IBM but fits in the briefcase with a flat panel display. I'm not talking from certain knowledge of any manufacturer, but should some company choose to do that and make it a 16-bit machine, there's nothing that I'd love to see more than a 1, 2, 3 I can carry around with me. We've committed to providing word processing and communications within the product in 1983, keep the price the same, not change the name to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We will be supporting and have the ability to support lots and lots and lots of peripherals without everybody having to go and turn in their disc to their dealer. Basically, add-on peripheral support for lots of printers and plotters and interesting cards on the IBM, such as the Hercules card, which is something that we'll have in the May release of the product. That replaces the monochrome controller card. One of the nice things that it does is it lets you see graphs on the monochrome screen so that you don't require 2 monitors and 2 cards. The graphs come out at a quite high resolution, about 720 pixels by 348, so we'll support that. I see a number of add-on products and things that will increase the general robustness and functionality of 1, 2, 3. And I see a couple of other things, and at this point I have to start being somewhat vague. We've seen lots of announcements and introductions of products like Vision and the Lisa machine. We've seen major advances in the area of user interfaces. We're not hiding under a rock out of Fresh Pond, and I think that we'll also see some things from Lotus that will move in the direction of increased ease of use through modifications to the user interface. And then we always have on the back burner a couple of projects at any given time which could turn into the next 1, 2, 3. We're not sure what those are yet. They have to sort of, it's like good soup. It takes a few hours to cook. You have to see how the stew comes out. Is it three-dimensional? The box and packaging is. You're asking about the graphs? No three-dimensional graphs now. That would be a whiz-bang feature. Oh, spreadsheet. No, two-dimensional. Yes.
What is your upgrade policy going to be when you have the word processing and
Oh.
communications? What happens to those of us who buy it next week without?
We've publicly committed to making that available for an upgrade charge, which is in the $50 to $75 range.
So if I wait, I get it for the same price,
But if you get it now, you get the functionality for the next N months, so it seems like a pretty good trade. Yes, sir.
Earlier, you mentioned about reading in WordStar. Does that mean that you could time WordStar to the data management?
You sure could. People do it all the time. Oh, the question is timing WordStar to data management. Yes, it can be done, and I've seen people do it.
How will you support the development of macros by consultants and other support units?
How will we support the development of macros by consultants and other people in the industry? Let me just take a quick show of hands of people that might be interested in such a thing, just in the audience here. Thank you. How many people feel silly raising their hands? Raise your hand. The answer is that we have a very active effort going on inside right now to figure out how best we can support people. Several things have become evident in the first month in the area of some basic tools that we're going to need to provide. We're not rushing at this point to announce any programs. We think they need to be carefully developed. We think that the consultants and, for example, people who are doing D-based development are going to need some time to get familiar with the product and to get a sense of what the commercial opportunities for them might be. If you call up now and ask that question, we in fact have a couple of people in-house who can talk to you some more detail about what some of the options which we're considering. And the other thing that will happen is that we believe strongly in not only supporting dealers, but supporting what we call value-added resellers. That is to say, people who are not in a retail computer store, but people who add value to a product. For instance, by creating specific types of application models or templates for a particular industry, and we are going to make it possible within 30 days for those people to be able to purchase 1, 2, 3 and to be able to resell it under our value-added reseller program. I have time just for a couple more questions. Yes, sir.
I'm presently a user of TRS 80 Physical, and the Physical program takes 2,500K of memory, leaving you with 23K of processing. With an IBM PC of 128K, how much of that would be taken by the program?
I think with a 128K system, you have approximately 38K available for models. Yes, last question.
Can you link and consolidate different models?
Yes. I'll be here, and a number of people from Lotus will be here. Some of us are going to need 1, 2, 3 pins after the meeting, so if you have more questions, we'll be happy to talk to you. Thank you very much.